All right, everyone, let's get started. Again, this is Carl Goldfield with BrandChats. Thank you for joining us today for our session, Using Social Media to Attract and Hire Top Talent, with our host today, Stacy Donovan Zapar. And for those of you that don't know Stacy, and obviously a lot of you do, she's the most connected woman on LinkedIn, over 36,000 first-level connections. She's been recruiting both inside and outside of organizations for over 15 years, and she's the CEO of her company, Tenfold Social, which she's going to tell you a little bit more about herself. If you have any questions, there's a little question and chat section. Feel free to ask questions throughout the webinar. As you ask questions, they will be posted, and I will do a Q&A session with Stacy at the end. We'll get as many answers as possible here, but then we'll answer the rest via our hashtag BChats. So if you're on Twitter, we're doing live tweeting of the session at #BCHATS. That's hashtag BChats. And if you want to get in the conversation there, great. Or if you have any follow-up questions, we'll all be there to answer them later. But again, without further ado, Stacy, here's the screen.
Okay, first off, I just wanted to say good morning and good afternoon to the folks on the East Coast, I guess. I'm really excited to chat with you guys today, talk a little bit about social recruiting, and kind of have a little fun at the same time. I will warn you guys, I am a little bit of a fast talker. I'm going to try to slow it down today. I've been in San Diego for a long time now, but I am an East Coast gal originally. We talk fast. I have had a little bit of coffee, a few cups this morning, and I do come from a very large family. My husband put it best when he first met them: too many chiefs, not enough Indians, and everyone's fighting for the talking stick. So if you wanted to be heard, you had to get it out fast. So I will do my best to slow it down for you guys today. A little bit about me, as Carl mentioned, I've been recruiting for a long time, both in the agency setting as well as in-house corporate recruiting. I've worked for Intuit and Qualcomm and WebSense, Gateway, a few other big tech companies along the way. I love LinkedIn. I believe in the power of networking and building connections, building relationships online through social and in real life, of course, as well. Big fan of Twitter as well these days, and do a little blogging for some different HR recruiting websites, blogging for jobs, Undercover Recruiter, Job Site, etc. And then, of course, we just started a new company. We do training, consulting, social recruiting strategies, as well as training for other business professionals how to use LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Google+, other social media to be better at your work every day. So that's a little bit about me. Let's jump right in. So let's see, a challenge I like to throw out to recruiters and marketers and other business people is, how do we create great companies? Obviously, as recruiters, we want to help make the company better and attract the right type of talent. That's why we're all here on the call today. There are, roughly 5,000 publicly traded companies in the United States, and I might recognize about half of those by name, I'm not sure. But if I were to ask you, any of you, to name some companies that are truly, truly great, you might only be able to name a small handful of companies, maybe a couple handfuls of a few more names than that. But usually we run out of names before we run out of fingers. There's Apple, IKEA, BMW, Amazon, Zappos, Burberry, etc. But really, when we rack our brains, the list certainly doesn't go anywhere near that 2,500 or 5,000 mark, does it? The question becomes, how do we bridge that gap, and how do we move forward to be a truly great company? And I believe, and many other people I believe, know that the difference is the people, right? So as recruiters, we have to believe that, especially, and anyone who's in a hiring authority position, whether that be in recruiting or HR or hiring managers or leadership in the business unit, it all comes down to hiring smart people, the right people that fit your company. Obviously, Zappos, as I mentioned, is one of those companies that typically shows up on that list, and their CEO, Tony Hsieh, believes that a company's culture is its brand, right? And building that culture all starts with the hiring process. He mentions that here. If you want to have a strong brand, you have to have a strong culture, and that all starts with hiring the right people. here's a few companies that jump out as being either really respected in the marketplace or really respected as an employer. These companies typically show up on the top employers to work for, or the most respected brands, or most innovative, you name it. But when you look at these companies, there's not anything necessarily terribly exciting that they sell or that they do that is necessarily more exciting than what your company does or what your company sells. You know, we've got shoes, we've got fast food, we've got, you know, tax software, which I love Intuit. I used to work for Intuit. A lot of passionate people there. The difference is that their people are passionate about what that company does. Those people love tax software. They get so excited when they talk about it, and all the other products, of course, there. So when we scan these companies, the list of these companies, they make smart hiring decisions. They hire people who are passionate about their company, their culture, their vision, and their brand. So when it comes down to it, by the way, I should note real quick before we move on that the best employee for Southwest might not be the best employee for Tom's, right? It's about matching the candidate to the product, to the company, to the vision, to the culture. And base your hiring decisions around that, of course. So here we go, a formula for success. Obviously, the best employees are those that already match your company's vision and brand. You don't want to have to shape and mold and change people to convince them to love your company or love your product or to fit into your culture or your company's vision. You know, square peg, round hole, that whole thing. Think about the folks at Apple's Genius Bar. These people don't necessarily fit your typical corporate polished image necessarily, right? They might have nose rings or visible tattoos or blue hair. I mean, they're super diverse and they don't necessarily fit a mold, right? The one common thread that these people have is that they love Apple products and they evangelize the brand day and night. They would do that whether they work for the company or not, right? They're out there, they're on social media, they're, you know, these Apple fanboys that we hear about or fangirls that we hear about. Sorry, I don't have a gal in the picture there. I should. But the ideal, you know, these are the ideal employees to hire. They're authentic and they fit seamlessly into your company's vision or brand. And where do we go to find people who are already passionate and engaged with that brand? Through social media. They're already out there. They're engaging with you on Twitter. They're engaging with your product on Facebook. They like it. They share it. They talk about it. They're blogging about it. They're putting in comments in Mashable and TechCrunch about how much they love your latest product. These are the people that you want to find and attract to your company. So social recruiting becomes instrumental and is a key to your success when it comes to finding that talent and honing in on the right people for your company, right? I love these graphics, by the way, these images. Facebook, Twitter, we've come a long way, baby. Obviously, social networks like Facebook and Twitter, LinkedIn, Google+, YouTube, Instagram, Pinterest, these are all a recruiter's dream. You know, I recruited back in the day when we had news groups and we had green screens and you had a big telephone with this big long cord and, you know, you were cold calling and finding clandestine phone lists. I mean, it was really, really hard to recruit back in the day. We didn't have these giant databases of 200 million people on LinkedIn with amazing data and rich data that we could slice up and dice up any way we wanted to find exactly what we need. So is your company taking advantage of all these wonderful social tools, all these technologies, or is it stuck doing things the old way? We're going to take a look at some of the ineffective ways of the past that, you know, we were limited either by choice or by a lack of these technologies, and talk about how social media can be a much more effective choice. And by the way, when I say these ways of the past are still very much in the present in many, many companies. So that's where you need to come in and think, okay, which of these better represents what our company is doing currently, and what do we need to do to bridge that gap? Okay, here's a pretty standard place and a really good place to start, the post and pray philosophy, right? Many, many, many recruiters for many, many, many years and hiring teams, they resort to posting a job on Monster or posting a job on Dice or posting a job on Craigslist and then crossing their fingers and waiting to see who applies. This can take a long, long time to find the right candidate. If you are waiting and reactive and waiting for people to apply to your position, you have no control over the process. All you can do is, refresh your posting every few weeks, right, to show up at the top of the list. That is not proactive recruiting. That is not being a digger or someone who's going out and finding the talent that your company needs. That's absolutely the opposite of being proactive. In a new social world, we're able to influence and affect the process. And that is absolutely key to being a subpar recruiter to being a proactive, effective recruiter. So here we go. I'm not going to read all these quotes to you guys today, but basically, do you want to sort through job board spam, or do you want to build engagement with candidates who are passionate about your brand? And that's what it all comes down to. Okay, next. When it comes to finding qualified candidates that lost my thought there, apologize. When it comes to finding quality candidates, we all know that employee referrals yield better results than job boards, right? When we interviewed people, when this JobBite interviewed people, they found that 40% of people expected to get quality results through employee referrals. When it comes to job boards, recruiters had a much, much, much lower expectation of quality. So 2% versus 40%, where do you find employee referrals? Employee referrals, by definition, are the people that your employees know. Your current employees, their network. How do you tap into the people that your current employees know? Through social media, right? Their friends, their colleagues, their coworkers. It's all how they're connected online, how they're connected through social networks. And this is a fabulous way to tap into that employee referral base. Job boards, again, that's more that post and pray kind of method that we talked about that's quite outdated. And not to say that it's to be thrown out entirely, but it's certainly not, it shouldn't be your only strategy in your game book. Number 2, paid job postings, right? The old school classifieds, the old school expensive job postings. Right now we have low-cost, free social outlets to advertise our openings, right? We can, you can send a tweet out. That's free. You can update your LinkedIn status and send it out to all of your connections. That's free. You can share it in a LinkedIn group. You can still pay for postings, but there are so many other free outlets and low-cost outlets that can reach really wide audiences that this is a wonderful outlet, a wonderful choice for people who have limited budgets when it comes to recruitment advertising. Here's another quote about how social media allows you to easily and cheaply identify and target people that are not actively job seeking. And we're going to talk about passive job seekers in a moment. I have a little personal anecdote here. I'll make it quick. I used to recruit in Richmond. We had very limited recruiting budget. This was before the days of social media. We were pretty limited when it came to our options. Our boss, our department leader, was kind of grasping at straws and decided, we really need this, RPG 400 programmer. This is showing my age, by the way, talking about RPG 400. Anyway, these old school kind of technologies now, but at the time it was very hard to find this skill set. And his rationale was, well, we'll post an ad in the Detroit Free Press because Detroit, gosh, people would love to leave Detroit and come to Richmond, right? That was his whole philosophy. We blew a big wad of cash on an ad in Detroit Free Press, got 0 applicants, of course, from it, but it was a shot in the dark. This is what the old school way was, the steps that we would take to try to find talent. We were desperate. We didn't have, now you can go on LinkedIn and find anybody, anywhere, in any country with any skill set with just a few keyword searches. Obviously, this is much greatly preferred over this personal experience that I've witnessed in my past life. All right, back in the day, right? No interaction, stale, outdated. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. I remember in the old days, I would never, never, never give out my email address. I would never give out my phone number, especially. I didn't even want anyone to know my name was attached to that position. We all hid, the recruiters hid, and we didn't want anyone to know our name. They might actually call me or come visit or show up or mail me a letter. We didn't want to be found for some reason. And obviously in today's new social world, it's the exact opposite. It's all about being interactive, having two-way conversations, being fresh, modern, being accessible. There's transparency now in recruiting. I want everyone to know what my opening is and that I'm the recruiter for it, because I want to start conversations. I want to be available to the right people. Here's another nice little quote. I'll let you guys kind of scan that. The nut and bolt of this is good employers, good hiring managers, good recruiters, they plan to be found as much as they plan to hunt, right? It's this two-way conversation, find and be found, right? You need to be accessible. You need to be able to be found. You need to be contacted. GEICO has a great website. Here's a little example about, meet our recruiters. I love this. Connect with us on campus and online. They introduce Jeannie. You know, they give you a link to her Facebook. They tell you what she does, where she lives. They tell you something interesting about her. You know, I'm sure if you scroll down or scroll through, you'll meet more of their recruiters. This is absolutely a best practice. You want people to know who your recruiters are and be able to engage with them on social media. I have another personal anecdote here real quick. At Intuit, I had a candidate apply. I don't even remember looking at his application in our applicant tracking system because he had his name and then he had his address, which was in Turkey somewhere, right? Once I saw Turkey, I move on. My position was in LA, in California. Well, sure enough, I'm sure he had a cover letter in there that talked all about his plans, but he was going to be in LA for 2 weeks interviewing. I, of course, did not know this, and I passed right by him. Fortunately, I had a blog. I was on Twitter. I was on LinkedIn. I had my contact information everywhere. He went online. He commented on my blog. He tweeted me that he had commented on my blog. He found my contact information through LinkedIn. He reached out through other ways to say, hey, Stacy, you may not have noticed, but I applied for this position. I'm in Turkey now, but I'm going to be in LA for 2 weeks on these dates. Can you please interview me? This is how I almost lost one of the best hires of my career. This guy interviewed. He was awesome, fantastic. The hiring manager wrote a note to my boss, his boss, and their boss's bosses saying that this was the best hire he had ever made in his 5 years at Intuit or the 5 years at his previous company. Thank goodness that this candidate was proactive and reached out. Shame on me for not reading the resume, but let's face it, social media saved the day here. I was able to, since I wasn't looking all the way at his stuff, he was able to find me and stand out from the pack. But I was also accessible, and I responded to his social contacts. And fortunately, we got him hired, and he was great, and he's still there. Okay, reactive open vacancy recruiting. That was the old school days, right? The help wanted sign. You aren't looking for talent. All of a sudden, there's an open position, and you scramble, scramble, scramble to try to find the right person. You're already late to the game. The person who's leaving has already given 2 weeks' notice. You're already working against the clock. You're playing catch-up from day one. That's a horrible, it's not a very strategic place to start your search. In the new social world, you're able to be proactive and building relationships for on-demand talent. You're already having conversations with the right people so that when something becomes available, you're not scrambling to pay catch up. You are now able to already reach in and tap into that talent that you've already been cultivating for some time and conversations you've already been having. People who are already engaged and interested in working for your company. That's where you can tap into those folks. Here's another quote here. It goes from apply for to talk to, right? We're connecting, we're following brands long before we're applying. Think about it. That's where those Apple folks are. That's probably where those Tom's people are. The Tom's people are probably on Pay It Forward websites and giving back, and you're going out there and you're engaging with these people where you know the folks that are going to fit your culture and your vision and your brand are hanging out. So it's all, rather than it's waiting for people to apply, it's all about talking to people and having these conversations. I have a personal story here, a success story that I think motivates a lot of agency recruiters, but it also can inspire some in-house recruiters to save money that you are currently paying to agencies. But long story short, I had a UX position coming up. I knew I was going to need UX. It's kind of a tough skill set to find good ones anyway. I took some time. I built a talent community. I was in LinkedIn. I was in Twitter. I was retweeting UX articles. I have a husband who does UX, so it made it really easy. I was able to find good content through his Twitter stream and share a lot of the stuff that he found valuable. But I was building relationships, and I was engaging with these people, and I was having conversations with them so that when the time came that I had this UX opening that I saw potentially coming up, all I had to do was send one tweet. And I said, hey, folks, my UX tweets here in San Diego. Does anybody know of a great UX person? I know of a fantastic opportunity that just crossed my desk. That's all I wrote. I didn't have a job title, now hiring. I didn't have a link to a job posting. It was very conversational, talking to people that I've already been talking to. They knew who I was, and all I did was this one tweet. I had 6 people respond to that tweet. 3 of them looked pretty good. 2 of them got interviews. 1 got hired, and I got a check, X% of their annual salary, as agency recruiters do, or as retained search gets. And I got a nice chunk of change from one tweet that I sent out. Of course, you know, I dug my well before I was thirsty, so to speak. But absolutely, you can hire great talent through social media and through Twitter if you take the time to build those talent communities and have those conversations. And by the way, I still talk about UX and tweet UX stuff even though I don't have a UX opening, because now I have that relationship. I'm keeping that talent community going. okay, the olden days, recruiter was acting alone to hunt for talent, right? You get the hiring manager and the VP. Why is that recruiter? We haven't gotten any resumes. Why haven't we gotten any resumes? This job's been open for 3 months. What's going on? Does any of this sound familiar, right? You know, when it's one person acting alone and they've got 40 other recs or 20 other recs that they're working on, you know, you're getting maybe, what, an hour a week that somebody's searching to find your talent? That's not the way, that's not ideal, right? Let's face it. In a new social world, we're able to use word-of-mouth networking. Everyone on your team is now a recruiter. You are out there reaching out to your network. Your team members are networking. This whole word-of-mouth viral approach to sharing job opportunities and reaching out to people makes it much, much more effective. You're using a whole range of people now, tapping into their resources, and you can reach vast audiences in a record time. Here's another quote. So recruiters are now able to expand their reach and connect with a targeted audience on a global scale. So rather than it being this you know, wide communication and you don't know who you're communicating with, you know, now we've got these targeted audiences and we're reaching out on a global scale to a wide audience in a short amount of time. JobBite did a social recruiting survey last year. People who use social recruiting strategies, 49% of them saw an increase in the quantity of candidates. Doesn't stop there, right? We don't necessarily want more people applying. We want better people applying, right? But at least at the start, we're getting visibility, we're getting traction, we're getting more eyes looking at our openings. 43% saw an increase in candidate quality. That one means a lot more to me. I'm all about the quality, right? We want to match up those people that fit our openings and fit our company. 20% reported that it took less time to hire. That's key. Every day that a job goes open, it hurts the business, it hurts the company, it hurts your team. We want to get these positions filled quicker. And 43% saw an increase in employee referrals. As we all know, it's better to hire a known quantity than it is these unknown people that are straight off a job board somewhere or what have you. So tapping into people that are already known quantities, respected by their peers, that's what we want. I love this graphic. I don't know, it's horrible. One-way book back in the days, you know, we had a one-way blast, an information push. You were announcing to everyone on Monster that you had this one opening, right? Even if it only applied to a very small percentage of people. So it was a one-way blast of information push. Now we have, as I mentioned several times during this call, we have two-way conversations. We have ongoing dialogue, much more effective than this one-way blast. You know, I think about recruiters who do Twitter wrong, in my opinion. They just blast job postings all day. They don't ever engage. They don't talk about other things. They don't respond to people. You know, you could still do social media the old way, and that does happen, unfortunately. One-way blast information push is absolutely an ineffective recruiting strategy, in my opinion. Here's a great quote. Best social recruiting is still two people talking, right? It's all about that conversation. I know that this is a webinar. This is not a conference call, so it's a little tricky to have a show of hands, but I was going to put it out there to the audience. You know, has anyone here ever found their job just through having conversations? You know, maybe those conversations started through social media. Maybe they just started because you looked up a name on LinkedIn and called that person. You know, has anyone found a job through social? I don't know if Carl wants to you know, see if anyone's responding to that, or I can just kind of keep going. But I personally can say that I have. You know, there was a company I really wanted to work for. They had a fantastic reputation. I didn't know anyone personally at the company, but I put out a few emails to people in my LinkedIn network and said, hey, how do you like working there? You know, thanks a lot. Here's some information, blah, blah. I had another reason to talk to them, but I said, at the end of the email, I said, how do you like working there? And they said, yeah, it's great. We're always looking for great people. You know, stay in touch. You know, call me if you ever want to chat. And so, you know what I did? Of course, I was kind of fishing, right? So I picked up the phone and I had a little conversation. Before I knew it, I was having a conversation with that person's boss.
Stacy,
yeah.
we have about a dozen hands up, just to let you know.
All right, I'll finish my story and then we'll talk about that a little bit. But long story short, yeah, before I knew it, I had an offer. Did they have a job posted? Did they have an open vacancy for that role? No, but they made a spot for me because it was all about the conversation. They wanted top talent. They realized I was passionate about their company. They realized I was already engaged and following what they were doing online. I kind of fit that model that we talked about, right? I fit into what what they were already doing, and they recognized that that would be a good hire, and I did. I joined the company, and it was great. And this company, by the way, was into it. I guess there's no reason to hide that. They're always on the top 10 list of social recruiting companies, and I absolutely hunted them down, and it worked out. So thank you, Intuit. It was a great company, and I'd still be there if I didn't have my little guy running around. So that's the only reason I left.
Real quick, Stacy, that dozen just jumped up to 20.
Woohoo! 20 people found their job through social media. That's fabulous. And so I love that. And that's a pretty good percentage of people on the call. So I absolutely am thrilled to hear that. Maybe we can talk about some of that during the Q&A. I've got 15 minutes left. This is good. We're doing well on time. I hope I'm not talking too fast. I kind of forgot that whole slow it down thing. I'm going to take a sip of my coffee here, just to keep the gas tank full. All right, so superficial contact with a mass audience, right? We talked about that. When you posted a job on Craigslist, everyone who happens to read the job boards on Craigslist, that's who you're reaching, right? It's not very meaningful. It probably doesn't apply. That tax accountant position probably isn't relevant for 99.999% of the people reading that posting, but you did it anyway, and that's what you did. In this new social world, we obviously are looking to have meaningful contact with a target audience. We want to be very specific, and not only in who we're talking to, but what we're talking about, and making sure that there's a match there. Jorgen Sundberg, great guy. I now blog for him. I have a lot of respect for him. He's over in the UK. He's got a great quote here: using social media as your new sales funnel. It's about starting on Twitter, having a meaningful conversation on LinkedIn, moving it to a phone call, meet for coffee, turn it to in real life, all that good stuff. It's true. Many of the people that I now consider my friends, I've only met once or twice, but we've had relationships online for years. And I know that if I ever needed to hire someone, I would start with them. And if they ever needed to hire someone, they might start and think of me. This is really, really good stuff. This is what you want. The purple squirrel, in recruiting, this is a pretty common term. I assume outside of recruiting, people may or may not have heard of it as much, but it obviously refers to that elusive candidate that is really, really impossible to find. There might be 3 of them in the world, or maybe 10 on a good day, that even exists. So how do you find those people? Could you find those through the ad in the Detroit Free Press, the classified ad? Can you find, the purple squirrel through a monster posting? Probably not. It really takes the dig, it takes the hunt, it takes research, it takes LinkedIn, quite honestly. That's where I've found most of my purple squirrels along the way, either through word-of-mouth networking or on LinkedIn, where you can really plug in great search criteria and find people. I had my old head of engineering at one of my former employers said he wanted somebody in Beijing that used to live in the U.S., that now lives in Beijing, possibly an expat, somebody who's here who's willing to move to Beijing. They have to be a dev person in the SaaS space. This was in 2006, 2007, when SaaS and cloud and all this was pretty newfangled and not very common. They had to have security, they had to have SaaS, but not SaaS on the operations side, SaaS on the dev side, blah, 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 blah. All these criteria. It was super, super purple squirrel. Found him somebody on 2 weeks in LinkedIn. The guy interviewed. Of course, the hiring cycle in Beijing was really, really, really long, but he did get hired. He's still there. Absolutely gave me a lot of street cred with this executive, and he thought, wow, I didn't think she could do it. I just gave her this high in the sky, super high bar, and look, she delivered on it. I don't take credit for that. It was, I found him pretty quick just doing some searches on LinkedIn. So absolutely, that's where it's at. And it turns out, of course, that was such a niche market that a lot of people at my company knew him or knew of him, and we kind of tapped into that and kind of turned it into some employee referral, word-of-mouth stuff as well to help land him. So it was a combination of a few good things happening, but all of them very social in nature. Number 8, here we go. This is the last one, or no, one more after this. Lack of awareness internally about open positions. This is a huge disconnect, right? We have all these employees that love what they all work in this space. They're all niche to our market. And they know people that do the exact same stuff as them, right? They have the same skill set. They have the same industry background. They have the same passions. They have the same skills. And we're not tapping into that because why? A, they don't know what openings we have. They're not visiting our careers page and scrolling through the job postings. Like, that's not their idea of a fun afternoon. They just don't know. And Secondly, you know, the word of mouth piece is just not easily facilitated in an old school kind of world where there wasn't the technology to facilitate that. Obviously now we are able to share openings with current employees through social media. We're able to tap into their network. Here's my employee. I'm connected to him on LinkedIn. I can now reach out to everyone he knows and everyone that person knows all through social. So absolutely, employee referrals can increase when you tap into your internal employee base, right? And you can find people that they recommend that share the same passions. If this person fits in really well with your culture and believes in your brand and believes in your vision, of course they want to help find people that also fit into that culture and fit into that vision and further support your company's goals and objectives, and just kind of fits into the culture, right? That's what we're looking for. I love this. Craig Fisher, got to meet him for the first time this month. A lot of respect for him as well. The future of social recruiting lies in harnessing the power of your entire workforce. Everybody is a brand ambassador, right? The result is more engaged employees, better talent attraction, all the stuff that I talked about in my intro section here. Every person in your company is a potential recruiter and also a brand ambassador, in my opinion, as he mentions there. So what are we doing to turn those people into recruiters? Social media absolutely makes that easy. A lot of applicant tracking systems integrate with social really well. They can share positions with their friends on Facebook, all sorts of fun stuff happening there. Friends of friends. I like to always say this. You never know who your friends know, right? We've got these bridesmaids. Look at the one in the middle. She's got a nice sleeve tattoo going on there. I mean, people come from very different, diverse backgrounds, and you don't know who your friends are going to know. My mother-in-law, this is a kind of a crazy story, but she did not have a LinkedIn presence, but she really, really wanted to change careers or change companies and have a little bit of a different role. I helped her build a LinkedIn profile. I helped her how to connect and build her network. I gave her a week or two to actually build out her network. And then we reached out to a company that she really, really, really wanted to work for. She found a job posting. She applied. She didn't hear anything back. I helped her through LinkedIn reach out to the hiring manager, or who we assumed was probably the hiring manager for that position. They did have one connection in common. Guess who that connection in common was? It was her old boss. It was her old boss that was connected to the hiring manager of this other job. Lo and behold, it turns out that her old boss was a bridesmaid in the wedding of the hiring manager. They were best friends in college or roommates or something. It is a really, really small world. Of course, you know, my stepmother or my mother-in-law's old boss recommended her highly. She got the interview. They flew her out. They loved her in person. She got the job. Now she's working there. She's managing a team up and down the East Coast. Almost doubled her pay. All kinds of good stuff happened. But really, otherwise she would have applied online, waited, and not heard anything back. You don't know who your friends know. She didn't know her old boss was college roommates and, you know, bridesmaids with the hiring manager of her dream job. So it all worked out. For recruiters, the inverse is true too. You know, you can go backwards with that. You don't know who your employee knows that might be the perfect candidate. And that goes, you know, throughout social. It's amazing. I hear stories like this every day, and it blows my mind. Like, no way, we know that person in common. That's so cool. Anyway, last one. High percentage of active job seekers in the pipeline, right? In the old days, you were reaching out on Monster to people that were out of work or really unhappy in their job or had changed jobs 5 times in 5 years, and that's why they can't find another job. I mean, a lot of, not exactly your ideal candidate pool, right? The 20% of people who are active. But remember, so recruiting has always been social, right? Even before we had these technologies, a good recruiter used her Rolodex or his Rolodex. They were out there making phone calls. They were going to networking events. They were having conversations with people. Well, who do you know that might be interested in calling that person? This is all the same thing. This social stuff doesn't replace the good social aspects of recruiting from the old days. This is just the technology to amplify it, to maximize it, to supercharge it, right? So don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Not everything that we did before was bad. In fact, some of it was really, really, really good. But now we have some technologies to automate that and make it 100 times easier than it ever was. So that's it. That's all I have for my part. Thank you guys so much. I look forward to having some Q&A with you all right now and answering any questions that anyone might have. And thank you so much for hearing me out. I hope that this was interesting, informative, and all that good stuff.
Thank you, Stacy. And like Stacy just mentioned, everyone, please feel free to jump in and ask some questions. We've got about another 20 minutes or so. Stacy was worried she wasn't going to get done by 11, but as she mentioned, our New York fast-talking styles got us through this in under 40 minutes. So we've got plenty of time for questions. Also, you can jump in and take a look at the conversation going on online at #Bchats. If you have any questions, you can also ask there. But it looks like we have some questions coming in. I'm going to start getting some of these questions. So the first question I have is, do you think it is more effective to use LinkedIn or Twitter when recruiting?
Hear me? Is my sound on?
I can hear you.
Okay, cool. I think absolutely it should be a multi-pronged approach. I think when it comes to, this is kind of how I describe the difference between Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. I think of LinkedIn is basically everyone you know, right? Everyone you know you're connected to on LinkedIn, or you should be. Facebook is pretty much everyone you used to know, right? Everyone you used to know, they're at least on Facebook. Twitter, I like to think of as everyone you'd like to get to know, right? Twitter is great for meeting new people. It's for making new connections, building new relationships. It's truly, truly social. It's all about the conversation and the engagement. So to answer your question, if I want to do a deep dive search, right, I want to do an extensive Boolean search and find a candidate that has a really niche skill set, of course I'm going to turn to LinkedIn. That's absolutely the best place. Their search is unparalleled. The data that's in that database blows my mind and gets me really excited, and I love just even thinking about it. I'm obviously a LinkedIn girl. I believe in the power of numbers and connections and expanding your reach. So I wouldn't say that one is better than the other. I think one is great for search. There are definitely social components to LinkedIn, right? You can do status updates. You can participate in groups. There's LinkedIn Today. There's LinkedIn Signal. There's all sorts of fun things that you can do to kind of tap in and join conversations. But absolutely the number one value of LinkedIn is the search capability, and it's unparalleled. No other database in the world can compete with that at this point. Twitter, I think it's great. Every recruiter should absolutely be on there. If you're on there now, you're going to get a head start on everyone else, and it's great. Twitter has 8 times the response rate. How do I put this? Let me make sure I quote this right. Candidates are 8 times more likely to respond to a job posting that they see on Twitter than they are on LinkedIn or Facebook. 8 times more likely to respond. The same candidate who gets approached by a recruiter on LinkedIn might say, stop spamming me, blah, blah, blah. If they get approached on Twitter by the same recruiter, they might say, wow, I'd love to hear more. There's just a different culture. There's an openness on Twitter that doesn't necessarily exist all the time on LinkedIn, especially when it comes between recruiters and candidates. So I say don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Okay, so I've got some more questions here for you. They're piling in. I don't understand this one. Maybe you can help. Is this webinar good for HRCI credits, PHR, SPHR?
That's a good question. This one is part of BrandChats, and so I don't believe that they've taken the steps to make this HRCI certified or approved necessarily, but you can always petition them and ask.
I won't call out the person who asked, but I can assure you I don't even know what HRCI is, so I definitely didn't do it.
That's okay. I will say this, the webinars that are going up on my website on tenfoldsocial.com, those webinars that are all going to be HRCI certified, those are going up in the next few days, so stay tuned. I'm going to have a whole series on for recruiters that are HRCI certified. They're in the process of being approved, so let me clarify that very carefully. But we've been in talks with those folks, and it looks like it's going to be good. But I'm sorry, this one, not necessarily. So.
Okay, so next question. Stacy, would you please comment on the use of social media tools for high volume hiring versus low volume purple squirrel hiring?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it all depends, right, on what you're looking for. There's high volume recruiting, there's this purple squirrel kind of recruiting, and everything in between. Some positions that require high levels of degrees and pedigree and certain really niche skills, and then there's some people that are looking for more high volume, maybe less the education isn't as important. I think Facebook is great. Excuse me, I'm starting to lose my voice here, guys. I think Facebook is great for high volume recruiting, engaging with candidates in that way, because there's a billion people on Facebook, right? And it's a very diverse population, right? It's not necessarily people that are, it reaches a wide audience, is my point. So I think for high volume recruiting, certainly, job boards do work for that. I'm not saying to never use them. I'm just saying that if you want to engage with people that are passionate about your brand, I think a Facebook page, a Facebook Careers tab on your Facebook company page is a great way to evangelize your openings, share your openings, drive people to your careers page, talk about the perks at your company, talk about the benefits, talk about the culture, include employee testimonials, have video interviews with people on that team that you have this high volume opening on, ask them what they like about working there. Really personalize it, make it real, make it authentic, give people a view into your company, into your culture, and then, close it by including the link to the job posting and drive people there. I think Facebook is fabulous for that.
I don't know if I ever told you this, but I actually was the director of sales that built Work Metro. That was eventually acquired by Jobbing. So Atlanta Job Zone, Work Baltimore, Work Austin, Work Chicago, like all those websites were ours. And I would say that your comment on job boards is fitting, because if you're doing high volume hiring, quality of candidate goes down. Not quality of person, but experience, what it's required to bring someone in. So it becomes a lot easier to aggregate out there and get the word out. However, in post, once you start collecting those resumes, having a tool that actually quickly tells you who they are by their social profile helps a lot as well. The next question we have here for you is, how do you best deal with organizations that are entrenched in their recruiting practices to the point where their unwillingness to change prevents them from taking advantage of social media for recruitment?
That's a great question. A similar question came up on a recent employer brand webinar that I attended that LinkedIn held, I believe. I believe that was the webinar. But I think that's true. A lot of companies are resistant to change. They're afraid of social. They're afraid of what people are going to say on social media. Their HR policies are very rigid. I kind of liken it to the days when, remember when cell phones first came out and internet first came out? I remember many an HR department blocked the use of cell phones and internet in the workplace. I know that sounds ludicrous in today's work world, but it absolutely was a reality. Oh, we can't have people on their cell phones at work. That's going to be distracting. Oh, they can't go on the internet. They're going to be playing around on AOL all day or whatever it was, Of course, nowadays we realize that these things are absolutely instrumental, absolutely key to any business's success, right? I view social media much the same way. People are going to initially be resistant, but they're going to notice that the innovators, those companies that we mentioned in the beginning of this deck, those people are the ones leading the charge. They're the ones setting the bar high. They're the ones having these successes. So the ones that are resistant to change are only going to be convinced when they realize they're getting left behind, and that may take some time, unfortunately. What can one individual do to kind of change the direction, to turn the tide, so to speak, internally? Here's the only thing that I can say, is maybe you get permission, rather than having the whole recruiting team get permission to suddenly go out and have Twitter accounts and Facebook and on LinkedIn and Google Plus and YouTube videos. Instead of, you can't obviously get all or nothing at once, right? Or go from nothing to everything all at once. But maybe you get permission for one specific person on the team who is pretty effective in this area, in your opinion, and have that person go out and make sure that they're very careful to stay within the guidelines, but to go out and have one person go out and kind of be the mercenary, if you will, and let that one person's successes give the company a reason, or give the HR or recruiting department a reason to kind of loosen the bind, so to speak. That one person having successes is going to open a lot of doors. So maybe that's a good strategy. Another thing that I like to tell folks is, people are on social media anyway, and they're already saying things anyway. So by having a policy saying that no one can go on social, that doesn't stop people from going out there and saying it. It's just happening anyway. By having the conversation about social, at least you're giving people guidance about what they can and can't say, or should or shouldn't say, and you're able to have a little bit more awareness around it. having a no social media policy doesn't keep people from going on social. It just makes them, it's happening anyway. So in my opinion, obviously I'm a big proponent for social, so I'm going to, you know, pound the table all day long about how great it is. But I would just say start small. If you want to change the direction, start small and see if you can get one, maybe two people permission to just go on one or two sites and then expand it. If they start making hires and you're like, wow, we saved, we would have paid a $30,000 fee to hire this person through an agency, or, oh gosh, we found this fabulous candidate because we tapped into our resources and our employee base. Like, having successes is the only thing that's going to change the tide, and the feeling that they're being left behind by their competition, which they will be, in my opinion.
What is the most common mistake you see job seekers doing on Twitter?
Job seekers?
Yep.
What is a common mistake that I see job seekers doing on Twitter specifically?
That's the question I have here.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, I don't know that there's anything that you can do on Twitter that's so deadly and horrible and a big mistake. I think maybe a mistake by omission. I mean, the one thing that I think that people aren't necessarily doing on Twitter that they should be doing as job seekers is reaching out to the careers page of that company, right? HP has a great careers page. Microsoft has a great careers presence on Twitter. Google has a great careers presence on Twitter. Go out there and engage not only with the careers page and say, hey, you know, I applied online for this position. I'm so passionate about your company. You know, demonstrate that you are one of those people that needs to be on the Genius Bar if you're an Apple fan, right? But extrapolate it to whatever company you are really, really interested in. Engage with the careers page on Twitter. Find the recruiters that work for that company. Engage with those people individually on Twitter. Find employees or hiring managers. Say, hey, you know, I do marketing, I do Marcom, and I noticed there was a Marcom opening. I applied online. You know, that's probably more than 140 characters. But my point is have these conversations with these people, engage with the decision makers, show that you truly are one of the people that are passionate about their company, their culture, their product, their vision, that you want to join the team. Stand out from the pack. Remember, anytime you apply online for a position, you are one of dozens or possibly hundreds of other people that also applied. The chances that your resume will be reviewed and stand out from the pack is great. I mean, it is not great. The chance that you are going to stand out between 250 other people, you know, it's hard. So if you really are a good fit, do what my fellow from Turkey did, right? Stand out from the pack, reach out, engage. That's what people are not doing on Twitter that they should be doing. And a lot of job seekers don't have a Twitter account, so maybe it's a good time to get one and try it out. I tell you, Twitter is where the magic happens. I am the biggest fan. Many of the best things that have happened to me in my career have happened because of Twitter. So I am absolutely a giant fan, and if you're not there, you should absolutely get on there and give it a shot and try it out and just dip your toe in the water. You can't hurt. It can't hurt.
Okay, great. I was just actually tweeting that. Twitter is where the magic happens. So we've got one more question listed unless some more get asked. The next question here is, where can I get Twitter 101 training?
Interesting that you should ask. We are in the process of putting that up on my website in the next couple of days. We just put on a LinkedIn class, Spring Clean Your LinkedIn Profile. We're going to be putting some beginning Twitter classes up. This is for everybody, not just recruiters. We're going to have recruiter classes as well as general classes. These are all getting set up in the next couple of days. This is all brand new. So really excited to be offering these webinars. We're going to do some live classes if you're here in San Diego, but a lot of this is going to be done online just because my network is global, and I absolutely want to help folks any way I can. So we're going to do stuff for job seekers, we're going to do stuff for networkers in general, and we're going to do stuff for recruiters. So take a peek at Tenfold Social, obviously blah, blah, blah. Go to our Facebook and our LinkedIn page, follow us, you know, all that fun stuff. But really, stay tuned. We're going to do some cool stuff around Twitter training, LinkedIn, Google+, Facebook for recruiters and for other.
All right, we'll give another 10 seconds here. If we don't get any more, then we're good to go. Let's see. Oh, we got one. We got two. Here comes one. Is there?
Hey guys.
Are there? I'm going to change this a little bit to make it sound right. Are there any concerns about identifying minority candidates on social media?
Concerns in a bad way or from a diversity recruiting perspective? I mean,
I'm going to assume, I used to also work for a company that did social connecting and recruiting, and there was a big question is what you could turn on and off. I'm going to assume that this person means, are there any concerns about seeing the
right.
minority.
Gotcha.
In other words,
I mean, it's
you're
true.
federal
I mean,
recruiting or
you can tell.
federal government, you can't tell. You can't make any business decisions just based on sex, ethnicity, etc.
Right. No, that's true. I mean, a lot of these social networks all have social profile pictures, right? You can quickly identify, at times, I guess, if the person's put a profile picture, you can identify a woman from a man. You can identify ethnicity sometimes. You can identify age. These are all, things that are part of it, but you just have to be extra diligent in your hiring practices, make sure that your interview process is fair, that it's documented, that you're making documented hiring decisions, interview decisions, that your candidate experience is a positive one, that you're giving good feedback to your candidates after the interview. I agree. This is definitely a concern. I know that LinkedIn Recruiter, that the recruiter accounts, they take the profile pictures away for that very purpose, et cetera. This is definitely a concern. Social media, includes a lot of information that a regular resume does not. But I think as long as you're on the up and up, that you're following all the practices, you're being OFCCP compliant and all those fun things, EEOC awareness, all this fun stuff, I think that that's the only thing that you can really do. I mean, you can't not use social simply because of the possible, concern there. I think that you've just got to do your best to do things right. And
I'm gonna piggyback on this one a little bit because I used to have to deal with this all the time. I used to ask a very simple question. I used to ask a very simple question to anyone, even people dealing with federal, when they brought this up. Do you do face-to-face interviews? And if you do a face-to-face interview, all of these questions are irrelevant because you're going to see absolutely every bit of data that you would see on a social network when someone walks in, short of little things like what groups they participate in, etc. However, it's all a question of what Stacy mentioned, which is documentation. If you have a hiring practice and you document that hiring practice and there's no bias in that practice, adding a social network to that practice is not going to change that bias or lack of bias.
I agree. In fact, it's a common question that I get from job seekers. They say, should I include a profile picture? I'm a middle-aged woman. I'm afraid of age discrimination. And I say the same thing. That's exactly your answer to that question is my exact answer to them. I say, you can try to keep it secret and you can try to take years of experience off your resume, but the second you walk into that face-to-face interview, the jig is up, right? Or that's the expression, everyone's going to know what you're trying to hide. I mean, if they're going to discriminate, they're going to discriminate. Unfortunately, employers are. I really don't think it's a reason to not have a profile picture. You're going to get that much more visibility, that much more traction on your applications or your social profiles, and your LinkedIn profile is much more likely to get viewed and acted on if it looks like it's an active, an active account, an active profile, not one that's half finished and left to decay. So to answer the question is absolutely. They're going to see what they're going to see when you go into interview face-to-face anyway, and that's exactly what I tell job seekers. Put your profile picture up there. Be you. Own it. Stand out as being a stellar candidate through the experience on your profile, and don't worry about your profile picture costing you the job. I mean, I think that's, not any reason to not include it. So.
Are there any other social sites you recommend for recruiting besides the obvious ones, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter?
I was at TalentNet Live at South by Southwest a few weeks ago, and people were talking about how excited they were about using GitHub to recruit. I haven't used GitHub myself, I am ashamed to admit, but it's definitely on my list of to-dos now that I'm kind of back in the game and back in recruiting. So GitHub is evidently a site to check out. People are having some really cool successes. I know one recruiter who used to recruit back in the day before there were these big online databases and online social networks. She used to use Match.com to find candidates. Like, there are all sorts of fun places that you can go online and use them to find candidates that you wouldn't necessarily think of. So I would say GitHub is probably number one on my list to check out because people are pretty fired up about it, and it's a kind of cool kind of backdoor way to find candidates. But yeah, I mean, there's the obvious. There's the one that we talked about. I know that Google Plus is kind of where the techies hang out. So in a sense, everyone knows about it, but the big joke is that no one's on it. But I can tell you who is on it. These techies. That's where they're hanging out. That's where they're mingling. They're not excited to be necessarily on some of the other social networks, but they really like Google Plus. So if you're a tech recruiter and you're not on Google+, you're missing out because the recruiters who are there are having a field day. Because that's where the techies are hanging out. So that's one that may be obvious but not so obvious. So check that out. That would be my tip for that one.
Someone asked to spell the name of the site. I think it was GitHub. I replied back. GitHub is G-I-T-H-U-B, guys.
Yes, you got it. G-I-T-H-U-B, right.
And a Git is a piece of software that you put up that people can download. It's an open source situation where people can share software. Another final question, and then we're going to call it a day. I heard that some companies are asking for people's Facebook login info. What's your thought on this?
I think that this is the biggest blown up non-issue that has ever taken over the news world in the history of the world. No, I think this is greatly exaggerated. I think that this is something that somebody knew would cause a nice firestorm of media controversy, and a lot of news outlets ran with it. The Congress got involved. There are laws that are now passed. I have heard of one example of this, and I have heard of a lot of people talking about it, but I've only heard of one real example. I think this is something that got way blown up, way out of proportion, and is a major non-issue in this. I really don't think it's an issue, but it's got a lot of press time. That's what I think about that. Of course, I disagree with it. I don't think that they should ask for it, but yeah, I don't think it's anything we all need to lose any sleep over.
Yeah, I mean, the real question which has come up is it legal to ask for that, right?
Right. Yeah.
Essentially, you're asking the same thing as saying, can I have access to your private email account? Right?
Yeah, I don't think anyone should turn it over, and I don't think you need to worry about any of the ramifications if you don't turn it over.
Yeah, I don't know of any major institution that's actually asking for it. So
no, me neither. I think this was a very isolated incident by a very uninformed hiring manager, and it got blown up. That's what I think.
All right, folks. Well, thank you everyone for your time. Like I said, the Hash Beat Chats. You can continue the conversation. You can see all the posts, little footnotes here. Stacy, thank you so much. As soon as we get those,
it was a lot of fun.
As soon as we get those recordings in place, I'll let you know. Everyone, there will be some recordings of this posted eventually. And go to Stacy's website, check out more of her stuff. She's a fantastic addition to the recruiting community, and we're honored to have had her. Thanks again.